Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for us today to receive the team behind the app application Cadenza, which is Dr. Rena Upitis and Jodie Compeau. So thank you very much to be with us today. So could you introduce yourself briefly?
Sure, and congratulations on pronouncing my name correctly. My name is Rena Upitis, and I serve as the principal investigator for the Cadenza project. And we've been working on it for well over a decade, working with kids and working with parents and students, trying to develop a digital tool that would be fun and enticing, but also really support sound pedagogy and music learning. So my role has been in terms of the research, but also in terms of development and troubleshooting and playing with it with my own children and supporting the team as a whole. And the most important person in the team is Jodie. So we will ask Jodie to introduce herself next.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jodie Compeau, and I've been a piano teacher for, oh my goodness, it's approaching 30 years. It sounds strange to say that. So I've been teaching piano for a very long time, and I am the project manager for Cadenza. So I'm the middle person. I receive all of the troubleshooting, and I work with the developers, work with all of the users, and continue to maintain a studio of my own of 40 students. I came on to the project because I was searching for ways to evolve in my own pedagogy. I knew there was something missing. I needed a way to motivate my students more, and I wanted to be able to interact with them, not just in our 30-minute or 45-minute lesson. I wanted to interact with them during the week as well if they were having problems. And maybe just by fate, Rena and I came together, and she was working on this project at the same time that I was searching. So that's how I got involved.
Great. So hi, it's a pleasure to meet both of you today. So let's begin with our first question, for which there were some elements that you already talked about, but you can add details for sure. So could you briefly introduce the Cadenza platform, tell us who it is for, and explain the need it feels for learning and teaching music in an out-of-school context?
Rena, would you like to take that, or would you like me to take it? Okay, she's pointing at me. Well, Cadenza is for students of all ages and levels, we've discovered. It was originally geared towards ages 8 to 12 was what it was originally designed for, but it has expanded to any age level. I've had students as young as 6 using it, obviously with parental support and permission to interact online, up to 18-year-olds, and we have many users who are using it successfully with adults. So it's for all students, all levels. We have post-secondary. It's being used in classroom setting, in post-secondary situations for ear training by the wonderful Natalie DeGrasse. She has a wonderful program using it extensively. And it's also used for studio teachers. So it started out as a small idea and grew and grew. So it reaches a really broad spectrum. I think as far as the teachers go, it seems to appeal to teachers who are looking to innovate rather than teaching in the traditional, Victorian style. The student comes in, you do the 30-minute lesson, teacher assigns, and the student goes home having really no idea what practice is. Mm-hmm. And often the parents are also wondering, they know they're supposed to say, you should practice, but they really don't know what that means when they say you should practice. So Cadenza really fine-tunes the expectations, and it also allows for student involvement in planning the week of practice. For example, I had a student yesterday who was working with me, and I said, okay, now what do you think, how much time do you think you can commit to this week? And he said, we're going camping because the pandemic has lifted and we can go camping. We'll be gone Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I was able to say, great. How do you think you can strategize and make your week work to still get to the piano? And he came up with the plan to practice the night of his lesson, that Saturday, twice on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So the student becomes really engaged in the planning of the practice week.
Great. So they're really in charge. That's great. So you've already talked about it a little bit, but can you tell us more about the users of Cadenza? For example, in which settings do they teach? Which languages are they speaking? Where are they from? In the podcast, you mentioned having a lot of users from Ireland. So how did it happen?
We have users from all over the world. And how does this happen? You know, you tell me. With an electronic portfolio, it's often word of mouth. It's often somebody uses it and tells a colleague about it, and they tell another colleague. And in our case, the pandemic had a lot to do with it. So there was a time in February 2020 when all of a sudden we had users from Italy. And you may remember that when the pandemic started to spread, it was that part of Europe that was heavily hit. And they were obviously looking for something electronic to keep the music going. So those users, in fact, don't use it in English, they use it in Italian. And you asked about languages. Cadenza is basically an English platform, but because the teacher and the student communicate using Cadenza and write in their own ideas, thoughts, directions, progress, they can do that in the language of their choice. So we have not had users say we can't use it because it doesn't work in French, or it doesn't work in German, or it doesn't work in Urdu. They've been able to use it using their own keyboards and languages. And Jodie mentioned that we had a lot of users from Ireland. That's because we work very closely with a group in the UK called the Curious Piano Teachers. And one of their co-founders is actually in Ireland herself. And that would be Sharon Mark Taggart. And she, of course, has spread the word with her colleagues. So the world over. And most of our users are Canadian, but we're really happy to see so many countries involved with Cadenza.
Great. So I'm sure many members of our community have similar experiences and will be pleased to know that they can use it with their French-speaking students. So let's move on to our next question, which might be of greatest interest for researchers among us, but also for everyone, really. So how did the research feed the pedagogical features of Cadenza?
Well, that's a big question.
I guess.
I think that the underlying research is incredibly important. I think typically when people develop tools, whether they're technologically based, software based, or whether they're more traditional pedagogies, we tend to sort of say, oh, this sounds like a good idea and let's do it. And that doesn't always bear out in practice. So in our case, we started with a really, really extensive needs assessment. We sent out surveys to over 10,000 teachers and parents and students, getting a sense of how they currently teach and learn music, what's missing, what they would wish for, what their successes are, what their opportunities are, what their challenges are, and to get a sense of what they would most like to change if there was one thing they could change in their practice. And we heard thousands of teachers say, motivate students to practice between lessons. It was almost as if, they'd read the script. So that was the first part. We did a needs assessment. The second part was to do a very extensive meta-analysis of the literature on self-regulated learning to see what features we could embed in a tool that would help students take charge of the way and the pace and the methods of their own learning, in the example that Jodie just told you, for instance. And then after we developed our first prototype, we did a whole bunch of testing in studios with intensive one-on-one interviews and qualitative research, and larger research projects as well, where we again did quantitative surveys with large populations. So an iterative approach using needs assessment, testing, qualitative tools, quantitative tools, and just spinning it and spinning it and spinning it until we evolve to where we are right now.
Okay, great. So this has really robust basis from research. So that's very interesting. So next question will be a little bit more practical. Could you describe and explain to us the various functionalities of Cadenza? So that's a good moment to share screen examples if you want.
Sure, I will share my screen. I have a few things here that I can show you. This is the teacher view. So when I log in and I look at one of my students' practice week and what they've logged, I can see all of the tasks that we discussed in a lesson. So I just made videos, so I didn't have to rely on my internet. So I can scroll through and I can see we did review, we worked on scales, and that student, you can see, has practiced there all 5 days, so they got a star. Then they did 4 extra practices on top of that, and I can see all of the dates that were logged down here. Now, in fairness, this was over a 2-week period, so this is a superstar student, but they don't always do,
That's a great
plus
example.
4. yeah, it looks great. Yeah, so so that's kind of nice for me to see, and then I already know to celebrate with that student when they come into the lesson. So I'm already prepped during my lesson planning to go, oh, when I start Andrea's lesson today, I can't wait because I'm going to, we're going to celebrate that plus 4. Here is another little clip here. As I go through and I scroll through, hopefully this is the, oops, I'm sorry. I replayed the same one. When I'm going through with a student and I'm creating their lesson with them, we decide which piece we're going to work on. It gets typed into the task. And then over here, we decide how many days. For example, that student that was going camping, we could modify this if they're not going to be around. And then we can do really fun things like I can attach YouTube links in here so that the student can get a chance to watch a performance of this piece. Or Anne Crosby Gadet, Canadian composer, has this wonderful little video of a robot playing this piece. So I often link it here and I ask it to pop up in a new window so that the student doesn't get taken away from Cadenza. So yeah, so that's really, really fun for the students to, when they see a link in there. Sometimes I won't even tell them that it's there. So it's like a surprise. They show up and say, oh, here's a link I didn't know was going to be in here. And then there's a checklist feature to really fine tune what the student is looking for, what the teacher is looking for during the week. And I use the student's help to do that. So we go down this list and decide what would be the best way to get through the piece that week successfully.
Okay.
This is a student view. So this is what the student sees from their end. So all of that typing out that I did will come out over here. You'll see their targets, their bubbles underneath. The kids love those bubbles, and so do the adults. There's such a feeling of fulfillment. The timer starts automatically so that they know how long that they're going to go. And then there's the emojis, and the emojis are a huge hit. So one really critical factor in the pedagogy of Cadenza is self-reflection. And so the student can notify the teacher how they're feeling. They can tell the teacher through the emoji. They can tell the teacher by sharing an attachment of some sort, and they can tell the teacher by sharing a media annotator.
Okay.
So those are some of them. Could I also just share what the media annotator is? Because this is really interactive and so fun during the week. The student or the teacher can upload a video into what is called our media annotator. And then there are these little blue hash marks down here. And you'll see that as the video is playing along, the student can comment on the video, or from the teacher end, the teacher can comment on it. And there can be an ongoing conversation about this piece. So there's a discussion, and it's not just week to week. It's a wonderful feature, and being really used extensively right now by teachers all over the place. Yeah, so those are just some of the functionalities. One other functionality that I didn't screen record is our group feature. So a group lesson can be created for a classroom teacher, and they can assign one thing to all students. Or a private teacher might decide to record a bunch of ear training videos and share that with a group of their students. Yeah. Okay. So that's nice. Just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I can see there are a lot of things that teachers and students can do.
Yeah.
So how is Cadenza perceived by students and teachers who use it? What are the changes that teachers have seen in their students when they began using it?
Rena, would you like to take this, or would you like me to share some of the testimonials that I have?
Let me start and then you can share a little bit more. I think the important thing here is that if you think back to the early research that guided the development of Cadenza, what we're really looking for is a change in student attitude so that they become motivated to practice on their own, to learn on their own, to guide their own learning. And that happens with the kinds of features that Jodie showed you, which is a mixture of sort of fun game things with points and stars and filling in circles, but also moments where they write a reflection about what happened during their practice and share that with their teacher at the moment that they need some feedback. So because of that range of features, we find that students indeed begin to be able to direct their own learning, because it's not about falling in love with an app. It's about falling in love with music and being a musician.
Yeah, of course.
So Jodie can also read you some short testimonials from students and teachers, because these are the kinds of things that make our day when they come in on email to us. So Jodie.
Sure. Well, I'll share one from actually one of my students, Harper, who is 10 years old. And she says, Cadenza helps me stay organized during the week. I feel like I accomplished something.
Oh, wow.
It's nice and simple and sweet and, you know, but right to the point. I have a testimonial here from a teacher in the UK who says, Ellen is a transfer student that started with me in September. A really curious, engaging student that I was surprised only had 20-minute lessons because she is really enthusiastic and eager to learn. Before Christmas, she was using Cadenza, but merely to check her practice for the week, and that was it. She started back with me last Tuesday, and I have upgraded her to 30 minutes. We had a lesson tonight, and already I know she has transformed her pieces because she has routinely uploaded recordings of her practice to Cadenza for me to check, and we have engaged via comments. She even told me that she has been working on Canon and D, which she has learned by ear and is keeping for tonight as a surprise. I just sat and listened to her most recent recording before planning her lesson this evening, and OMG, she has made more progress in a week using Cadenza than she did before Christmas. Wow. So that's we
impressive.
love it when those come in. Yeah, and there are a lot of very similar, they are starting to show more ownership of their lessons and are actively engaged in practice approaches instead of passively waiting for me to tell them what to do.
Yeah, that's quite a change for
there are many,
a lot of students. Yeah, thank you for sharing this.
Transformational.
Yeah. So finally, this is already our last question. So our network, WePLAYMusic, is focused on learning music through a playful approach. So how can Cadenza contribute to feeding this pedagogical approach? Do you have examples of teachers who use such an approach with Cadenza, so who use it just to engage their students with more game-based learning, for example?
We've already talked about some of the gaming features that are actually built into Cadenza. And, you know, a pure researcher would say, oh, that's extrinsic motivation and, you know, you shouldn't be doing that. But in fact, kids love it. And if we ever want them to be self-motivated, we have to go through many, many different techniques to make sure that happens. And a playful attitude goes a long way. The other thing I'd like to say is that it's not just the teachers who are using Cadenza in a playful way. The students do too. We have lots of examples where they have taken the initiative and written a composition and about their dog or about their,
wow.
You know, I mean, it's usually an animal actually in the household. And so that they are doing something, they're doing something playful, innovative, something that they would not have done otherwise, and sending it to their teacher, you know, often with the media annotator. So it goes in both directions. And if you have that sense of engagement and play, it also is there in the lesson. So we think it's very important. And we think that Cadenza in the hands of a teacher who understands contributes to that sense.
That's nice, really nice. That's a whole new philosophy of teaching and learning for a lot of parents and students and teachers. So that's really fascinating. So thanks a lot for sharing your time with us today. I'll let Francis close the interview.
So thank you very much. It was very interesting, and I'm sure our members will appreciate a lot what you explained and presented for them. So we will try to disseminate this recording with many people, and also we have members from different countries too, and Spanish and Portuguese and speaking people. So for probably September, we'll be able to share this recording in different languages. So we'll add some subtitles to the recording. So thank you very much. It was very nice to have you with us this morning, and have a good day and great success with Cadenza.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.